and join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, thank y'all for being here today. Before we start the hearing, I'm going to recognize Mr. Hammonds for a matter.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Great River filed its petition in these dockets in July of 2022. Prior to that, Great River acquired water and wastewater systems for over 2 years. Many of these systems were distressed and in disrepair. Great River's petition in these dockets represents the Commission's largest water and wastewater rate case, the largest geographical statewide rate request for a water and wastewater utility, and this Commission's first water and wastewater utility to request a formula rate plan. Given the complexities associated with this case and the voluminous record that is currently in this docket, to fully evaluate this request, I'm recommending the Commission refer this matter pursuant to 77-340 to me for hearing.
Okay, is there any questions?
I'd just like to make it a formal request as part of this record as we go into this potential hearing by the hearing examiner, that the public utility staff issue on the record their recommendation and reports related to this and recommendation as to whether or not this case ought to be approved.
Do I have a second?
Can you please restate that motion or request, Commissioner Preston?
It's not a motion. It can be. I move that. Let me restate that. I move that we approve the request to move the case to appoint Mr. Hammonds as a hearing officer in the case, and as part of that motion that we request that the public utility staff make their recommendation as to the disposal of the case and their report as a part of the official record prior to any order being issued.
Okay, I'll second that. Do you have any questions?
Can I ask for an amendment to that motion, I guess?
Yeah.
Can I request that the motion to insert staff's recommendation as a separate matter?
Are you saying a second matter to be voted on?
Yes, sir.
Vote on it in a second way?
Separate matter, yes, sir.
I don't mind to amend that, but I'm going to request that I'm going to make a second motion. And I don't mind to honor your request, so I'll strike that and withdraw the previous motion. Motion would be to approve appointing Mr. Hammonds as a hearing officer in this case for a recommended order. That, of course, at that time, any commissioner, I'm just saying this as ain't part of the motion, but any commissioner can find exceptions with and bring it to the commission for a full vote. But my motion is to appoint him as a hearing officer for report and recommendation.
And I'm second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
No.
My second motion, Mr. Chairman, is I move that we request as a part of any final order, as of any prior to the issuance of any recommended order, that the public utility staff issue on the record their recommendation as to the final disposition of this case and their recommendations and report related to it.
Do I have any questions? Okay, I'll second that. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Ayes have it. All right. Okay, with that, we're going to take a short recess, then Mr. Hammonds will conduct this hearing.
So, you're going to conduct the hearing immediately following now?
Yes, sir.
Is the commission going to go into recess for a minute?
Yes, sir.
If it is, I need to visit with you.
All right, before the commission for consolidated hearing is docket numbers 2022 UN 086 and 2022 UN 087, notices of intent of Great River Utility Operating Company LLC to establish statewide rates for water and wastewater disposal service in its certificated areas in Mississippi. We'll start with entries of appearance. Counsel for Great River.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Hammonds. This is Leo Manuel. I'm here with my law partners, Ricky Cox and Mary Catherine Barnes. We are with Balch and Bingham, and we are representing the petitioner, Great River Utility Operating Company, LLC.
Thank you. For the commission
Laura Dixon on behalf of the commission.
and for the staff.
Emily Kruger on behalf of the Mississippi Public Utility staff.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Manuel may proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Hammonds. A very brief opening statement for the commission, and then we've got the panel of witnesses to introduce. Just on behalf of Great River, I'd like to thank the commission, their staff, the public utility staff, the consultants that were hired and that we worked with, of course, the party interveners in both dockets. We've worked for several months. There's been a lot of public participation in this proceeding, a lot of feedback from the public, including from yesterday. We have a stipulation in both cases that we're going to present to the commission for their consideration here today. And I'm going to have the panel witnesses summarize that for you. But we just wanted to extend our appreciation and thanks for all the work that everybody has done. It's been very thorough. It's been very cooperative and very professional. And so with that, we've got a panel of witnesses that I'd like to introduce, and I have some exhibits. After that, I've got just one or two questions, and then I would tender the panel for the rest of the parties.
Okay. Madam Clerk, can we go ahead and swear the witnesses in, starting on the left? I guess if y'all all want to stand up.
I
Raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give are the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? Yes, I do. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So my first line of questioning is to Mr. Matthew Howard. Mr.
Mr.
Howard.
Do we need to get your exhibits in the record, or?
Yeah, we're going to do that. I've got a witness I have to substitute,
Okay.
and then I'll get all of that squared away, and then I'll introduce the exhibits. So, Mr. Howard, could you please introduce yourself with your name and position for the record?
Sure. Matthew Howard, Director, Scott Madden, Inc.
Okay, and Mr. Howard, are you here today to adopt the pre-filed direct testimony and exhibits of Mr. Dylan DeCendis that are filed in both of these dockets?
Yes.
And before testifying here today, did you review the testimony you were adopting?
Yes, I did.
Do you have personal knowledge concerning the facts, assumptions, and methods that were employed by Mr. DeCendis in his pre-filed testimony?
I do.
If I were to ask you the same questions in the pre-filed testimony would your answers here today be the same as Mr. DeSantis has in his pre-filed testimony?
They would.
Okay, and do you adopt that testimony as your own here today?
I do.
Okay. And then I guess for the entire panel, let me just ask, did everybody have a chance to review their testimony before testifying here today? And does anybody have any additions or corrections to their testimony?
No, we do not.
Were your pre-filed testimony and exhibits prepared under your supervision and control?
Yes.
Yes, they were.
And do you have personal knowledge concerning the contents of your pre-filed testimony and exhibits?
Yes.
Yes.
Do you adopt your pre-filed testimony and exhibits as your testimony here today?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, and then before I have introduced the trial exhibits, I would just ask, starting with Mr. Freeman, to introduce yourself, just your name and position for the commission.
Yes, I'm Jacob Freeman, and I'm the Director of Engineering.
I'm Todd Thomas. I'm Senior Vice President with Great River.
I'm Josiah Cox. I'm President and Founder of Central States and Great Rivers.
Mike Duncan, Vice President, Great River.
Ortiz, Vice President, Corporate Controller for Great River.
Thank y'all. Mr. Hammonds, prior to the start of the hearing, I coordinated with the court reporter, and I've passed out copies of exhibits, starting with Exhibit 1, which is a list of the hearing exhibits that I would like to offer for your consideration and submission to the record. I'll just read off that list. So Exhibit 1 is the hearing exhibit index. Exhibit 2 is the stipulation and exhibits for the water docket. Exhibit 3 is the stipulation and exhibits for the sewer docket. Those 3 exhibits are in paper form in front of for the commission, the staff, and the witnesses. The next is a composite Exhibit 4, which is the public portions of the company's filing, testimony, and exhibits for the water docket. Composite Exhibit 5 is the confidential portions of the filing, testimony, and exhibits in the water docket. Composite Exhibit 6 is the public data request responses in the water docket. Composite Exhibit 7 is the confidential data request responses in the water docket. Composite Exhibit 8 is the filing, testimony, and exhibits in the sewer docket, public. Composite Exhibit 9 are the confidential portions of the filing, testimony, and exhibits in the sewer docket. Composite Exhibit 10 are the public data request responses in the sewer docket. And Composite Exhibit 11 are the confidential data request responses in the sewer docket. For Composite Exhibits 4 through 11, I provided an electronic copy to the court reporter. I would move to introduce all the exhibits I just listed, and as referenced in Exhibit 1, as the hearing exhibits 1 through 11 for these proceedings.
Okay, we'll mark those as exhibits 1 through 11.
Okay, and Mr. Hammonds, I've got just 2 questions for the panel, mostly to summarize the summary, the stipulations, and then we'll be done. So, Mr. Cox, could you please first, since this is the first major rate case in Mississippi for Great River, can you spend just a minute kind of catching the commission up as to when you started and what the company has done?
Yeah, absolutely. So Great River and Central States Water Resources, our mission is to bring safe, reliable, and environmentally sustainable water resources to every community in the U.S. And really, here's why that matters. There's 85,000 water and sewer utilities in the United States. To give you an idea, in England, there's less than 26. There are, in this country, there are about 70,000 violations of the Clean Water Act on an annual basis. And the majority of the acute violations, so think human health violations, occur in systems below 5,000 customers. So really, we started this company to address that issue. We're sitting in a city that's emblematic of the need for water investment, across the country. And Mississippi, here's how it relates to Mississippi. Mississippi is one of the states with the highest amount of fragmentation, so most small systems, the highest amount of non-compliance in the country. So really, we came here to buy small systems, like they're before the commission today, because they're in need of radical reinvestment. Our company, we're the 11th largest investor-owned water and wastewater utility in the United States. So what that really means is we're really experts in small systems. In fact, today, I think we're the largest owner of domestic wastewater treatment plants in the U.S., right? So in Mississippi, I think we have over 80 wastewater systems, and I think 14 or 15 water systems. Not all those are inside this current docket in this rate case. And really, the systems we bought here in Mississippi are typical of the systems we buy all over the country. They're either completely failed or in extreme state of disrepair. I've got tons of stories. Great example, north of Oxford and Highlands. When I first came to the state 3 years ago, we were looking for a wastewater treatment plant, and the lat long that was listed on the permit, it was incorrect. So it took hiking around, following, manholes, all that kind of stuff to find a wastewater treatment plant that was supposed to be an aerated lagoon. Well, there was no electric and no access. So basically, the previous owner had dug a hole in the ground, and there was no treatment, right? And that's fairly typical. It's not just here in Mississippi, kind of across the country, but those are the systems we're buying, and those are the systems we bought here in the state and reinvested in. And really, as a company, we go through kind of two layers of investment. So when we buy these plants, we go through what we call triage. So imagine, like the system I just mentioned, there's no electric, there's no functioning mechanical, the disinfection system's not working. So what that really means is residents downstream from a plant like that are potentially in danger of coming in contact with human pathogens. So we're bringing those systems back online. So trying to just turn the plant on is the first wave of investment. So redoing the electric, redoing the mechanical, redoing the piping, doing disinfection systems, all that kind of good stuff. Same on the water system, the water systems we bought. Good example here in Mississippi, we bought a water system that had an illegal farm well that was directly tied into the water system. So in that situation, think you've got a well that's not been permitted with DEQ or the Department of Health. It's directly feeding into the water system, so people are drinking the water that's not gone through any treatment at all, right? So in that situation, we had to permit that well, push it through our headworks, which is really where you do all your treatment. Another great example of the kind of stuff we've done. So that's a great example of triage. We had to permit that, repipe the whole well, bring it through the existing treatment system so we had disinfection, all that kind of good stuff, right? So that is why we're before the commission today. It's interesting, the rates that we inherit, so we adopted existing rates here in the state, obviously are not sufficient to cover just basic operating costs. I mean, think when you turn on mechanical, you turn on electrical, you start adding chemicals, you all of a sudden have a whole new cost center that didn't exist before. The previous owners weren't doing professional operations and maintenance, so we've run at a cash loss in the state to date. We've lost about $2.5 million in the state over the last couple of years operating. Some of the systems we bought didn't have rates at all in place. In fact, 22 systems we bought had charged 0 rates. So we had to do emergency rates, temporary rates when we first acquired those systems. So that's really why we're here, what we're doing in the state. And then what we do to bring these systems to final compliance, we have to enter into compliance agreements, agreed orders with DEQ, Department of Health, all of that. And those compliance orders, what they do is we finish the triage work and they give us a statutory time frame in order to do all the construction necessary to bring these systems into final compliance with Department of Health and DEQ regulations. And to date, we've not missed a compliance deadline in Mississippi or across the country ever. And it takes 2 to 3 years between permitting with both those departments and commission filings to all the engineering, construction, all that stuff. And we're in the middle of that process kind of across the state.
Okay, so Mr. Cox, the company submitted rate filings in both dockets, one for water, one for sewer, and the company has since, after the pre-hearing conference that was held with all parties of record a little over a month ago, issued a stipulation in both dockets. Can you summarize just very briefly the impacts of that stipulation for the commission?
Absolutely. So really, as a company, we heard our public comments yesterday. We've heard from the public just over the course of this case. So we originally filed our original rate filing for water was $47.21. According to the American Water Works Association, the national average for a water bill is $45.44. On the sewer side, we filed a rate of $53.75. According to the American Water Works Association, the national average for sewer bills is $66.80. What we've stipulated to on the water side is $39.86. This is for a traditional residential rate, by the way. I'm quoting just the basic residential rate. That's a 16% reduction of what we originally filed. On the sewer side, we've stipulated to a rate of $39.86, which is a 26% reduction to our original filed rate. And really, what we've tried to do as a company, we've gone as low as we can go. We've figured out what is the highest amount of operating loss that we can capitalize in order to minimize rate shock for our customers. So really what we've done is create a formula rate plan that phases in rates over time in order to protect our customers, and eventually the final rates will go into effect at a future date. And at that future date, as we acquire more systems, the rate impacts will be lower as we get economies of scale. So this is the first time in company history that we've ever stipulated to a phase-in rate like this. So we've really, from our perspective, our company headquarters is in Missouri. We're the show-me state. We feel like we've come to the state. We've invested $38 million to date in the state of Mississippi with much more to go. And we've taken a cash loss. So we've shown that we're committed to the state. We're committed to our customers.
So, Mr. Cox, just to clarify and make sure that the record is clear, the stipulation phases in rates, so the rates you quoted are the mitigated rates, and then eventually customers would transition to a fuller rate that would be addressed annually in your annual filings. Is that right?
That is correct.
And so would this stipulation and this phase-in apply not just to existing customers, but to every customer eventually?
That is correct. What we contemplate in the FRP is that customers will get a stipulated rate, will get a reduced rate to minimize rate shock, as they're required as part of our annual filing. So every new customer the Great River buys will go through this cycle of having phase-in rates before they go to final rates.
And just to clarify, for newly acquired customers, you're still proposing to keep the existing rate that was previously approved prior to the acquisition?
That is correct. And that's part of the reason why we're, asking for this stipulated rate, so we can buy customers, keep the existing rates in place, except those systems that have no rates.
Right.
We'll have to go for emergency temporary rates at those points. And then we adopt the existing rates as they come in, and they would go to our stipulated phase-in rate and then eventually to a full rate. That's correct.
Right. Thank you, Mr. Cox. And Mr. Hammonds, that's all we have. I would tender the panel for questioning from any other party, the staff, or the commission.
Okay, I've got a couple questions. Can someone, you mentioned the stipulated rate on wastewater. Can someone explain the different tiers that are in that wastewater? If anybody's listening right now, I think 10 of these systems that are in this rate case are on the tier 1, so that would be a lower amount. Just provide some clarification on that.
Absolutely. Mike Duncan will be able to answer that question.
For sure. So there are 3 tiers within the sewer service. Tier 1 is for customers that are connected to a treatment process that involves a single cell lagoon or multi-cell lagoon without aeration. Because that treatment process has low requirements in terms of the effluent quality and just less operating costs, cost of service, they have a lower rate contemplated for those customers. And that would be going forward as well for newly acquired customers with that type of treatment system also. Tier 2 is for more traditional wastewater treatment, mechanical aeration, or multi-cell lagoons with aeration in the lagoons. Again, this is more costly because of the electrical costs that Mr. Cox mentioned earlier, and just the additional treatment that is part of that system. And so they're on the Tier 2 rate. Tier 3 is for customers that we provide conveyance to a third-party wastewater treatment group, whether that be a local sewer district, but we're not providing the treatment. So the cost of service is different because we are simply providing conveyance to those customers. And then there's a pass-through charge that is associated with the treatment that's provided by that third party.
Thank you. And Ms. Duncan, on the water side, can you explain the tiers, I guess, and also the metered versus unmetered?
Absolutely. So we have Tier 2 in being our main rate for customers that we provide sourced water to. We provide groundwater source and treatment of that, disinfection of that groundwater if necessary. And within that, there are metered customers that had a meter when we acquired the system. And so because there is a cost associated with just providing simple water service, 24/7, 365, that's what makes up the base charge. But then there's expenses associated with additional usage, whether it's chemicals or electric expense. And also to encourage conservation of water, having a volumetric charge on top of that for customers who may consume more water than others. For unmetered customers, we acquired customers that do not currently have a meter associated with their service. And because our initial improvements are really to provide safe, reliable service that's compliant with the Safe Drinking Water Act, as Mr. Cox described earlier, metering customers is not an initial focus of ours, so we need to create a rate for those customers prior to getting them onto metered service. So it is our goal to eventually meter all customers, but having an unmetered rate in the interim before we're able to install a meter and convert them to the metered service. Then the Tier 3 water service is water customers that we're simply providing a distribution system, and we're sourcing the water from a third party that has a volumetric charge associated with providing wholesale water to our system, but we're still responsible for the last mile and conveying that water from the third party to each of those homes. And so we have a base charge that's associated with that, and a volumetric charge that is an equivalent of the charge that we pay to that third party to provide that water.
Thank you. One question, and obviously, I think it's PSC 1-39 on rate mitigation, right? And the idea that the request that came in that's been evaluated, looked at by commission staff, 2 sets of consultants. Nonetheless, it's a rate shock for these customers. We've obviously worked through the pre-hearing conference and through data requests to come up with rate mitigation. Can y'all explain how, I guess what a layperson's question to me is, why is that as low as you can go? Why couldn't it be lower than $39?
Yeah, absolutely. So at a high level, as I stated earlier, we've lost, more than $2.5 million in the state, right? And the rate mitigation to date, what that really means, rate mitigation, it means we're not even capturing all of our operations and maintenance costs inside the existing rate. So we're foregoing, we're taking a cash loss to forego, current proceeds in order to have a time period for customers to adjust, right? So just from a basic standpoint, from a business standpoint, the Great River is not even, we're not able to get traditional debt at the state level because we're running a cash loss. So when I say it's as low as we go, literally we're not paying for the service to date. And the idea is to go through this rate shock, period. And then actual cost of service will lower over time as we're able to access traditional debt markets, all that kind of good stuff. So that's really, you can't take an entire cash loss. You have to at least make up some of it to show, both investors and lenders that you have a path forward to become completely solvent in the state.
Thank you.
If I can add to that, as Mr. Cox said, it's a cash problem for us, right, when you mitigate rates like this. And so what is created is a situation where we effectively have no cash to service debt. And so until we can phase customers all the way up, we would not be able to get traditional debt. The commission, in the acquisition cases, required us to do a 50-50 capital structure, so we understand we need to go there. And so until we can get to a fuller rate, we will not be able to source traditional commercial debt.
I did have one. I wanted to, I'll get to that one. Commissioner Bailey, do you have any?
So you stated, appreciate it. Thank you for letting me be a part of your hearing there, Mr. Hearing Examiner. So I appreciate the testimony and the information provided to date, and there's certainly a lot of good information and some other things I'll probably add down the road. So you mentioned that the $2.5 million loss to date. Are there plans based on the to recover those losses, or those losses that are written off per the pathway and the glide path that you mentioned to continuing to conduct business and expand acquisitions here in the state?
Yes, sir. So the answer is we are not trying to recover those $2.5 million of losses. That's kind of our investment in the state of Mississippi, and that's why we need this formula rate plan. And there are various mechanisms we've looked for to do to have this rate mitigation, because it will allow us to continue to buy customers in the state of Mississippi, because every time we buy a customer, we'll lose money on that customer. And obviously, our goal is to get a critical mass such that the cost of service is lower on a per customer basis.
So based on I think you stated y'all have spent or committed $38 million to date as far as the book value, expenditures, investments in upgrading and recovery of systems. What does future projections anticipate or look to be as far as additional investments in Mississippi at this time?
Yeah, so that $38 million is property, plant, and equipment. The $2.5 million cash losses on top of that. So we've invested over $40 million in the state of Mississippi. I mean, we'll invest $65 million in the state easily in just the systems we have to date. We're acquiring more systems as we go here. So, I imagine Mississippi will be one of our largest state markets. So I bet you we spend $100, $150 million in the state over the next 10 years.
So just real quick, you talked about the flat rate versus consumption-based billing, and the desire to eventually put all customers on a meter to meter and get their actual consumption numbers and bill based on that. What does that time frame look like based on knowing it would take additional capital to invest in those meters, and whether it's going to be remote read or manually read? I'm sure it's a decision that y'all will be making along the way as well. But what is the outlook, the horizon time frame for potentially implementing complete meter-based, consumption-based systems?
Yeah, our experience in other states is 5 to 10 years. to bring meters into every single customer.
So I'll have it this time.
Okay. I did want to make one point. Commissioner Presley had mentioned the staff's report. I did want to ask Ms. Kruger, within the staff's review of these dockets and your consultants, were there any disallowances identified in rate base or expenses?
There weren't. We submitted numerous data requests to Great River and reviewed all of their responses, as did our consultant, Larkin and Associates. And we found that the expenses that should be disallowed had already been removed. So beyond that, we did not find anything additional that should be disallowed.
Thank you. Not to get too in the weeds, but can somebody explain the system acquisition regulatory asset and the rate mitigation regulatory asset and how those will play out within the formula rate plans?
You just got weedy.
I apologize.
All right, well, I'll start with the high level, and I'll let Mr. Teese down here give the final detail. So the RMRA, which is the rate mitigation mechanism, what we're doing is we're deferring part of our operational costs to a future date. And we're taking that as a regulatory asset and then amortizing it over a long period of time. So basically, cost of service should be $53. We're charging $39. We're taking that delta and we're working it off over, is it 30 years? 7 years. 7 years, right? So there is a cost associated with that. The SARA mechanism is so that we can continue to invest in these distressed systems in the state of Mississippi, right? So we, as I said earlier in my testimony, there's some systems we bought had 0 rates in place when we bought them. Some rates are $12, $10. I quoted the national averages, so these are well below the cost of basic service. And we're taking those operational losses and creating a regulatory asset. How many? 7 as well. There we go. So we're taking those operational losses and deferring those over 7 years, and then putting them into the RMRA. So you're a customer. We buy you as a customer today. We adopt your existing tariff. We'll be you're running an operating loss. Next year, you would come into our RMRA, which is the rate mitigation, so to minimize rate shock, and we would continue to run an operating loss. We take those operating losses and spread them over 7 years, and then basically 2 years from now, you come into a full rate. Is how both mechanisms work, and I'll let Mr. T say what the impact of that is.
Yeah, so I think it's important to understand that it's designed to be a flow that when we purchase systems, customers keep the rates that already existed for them. During that time, we're booking net operating loss as a regulatory asset, and after the FRP reset period, we're converting them to the RMRA rate, where we book a fixed percentage of operating expense as a regulatory asset, and then in the subsequent year, they end up at what we would call our full rate. And so for us, all of those are amortized over 7 years as part of rate base. And so when you kind of look at them discretely, you can kind of determine what the rate impact is. So on the sewer side, which has a 32% deferral of expense, so on the for the RMRA, and so that's the bigger one. It's $2.73 that would be added to the full rate. And then on the sewer side, it's $1.29 because the sewer rate is closer to what we thought the target was.
Yeah, and I would just add one more point to that. As we grow, those rate impacts will be mitigated because we have a larger customer base. So we're quoting numbers based on the current customers, not on future what we believe the state will be in the future.
Gotcha. And it would be fair to say that customers that are currently in this rate case, they have had the benefit of what SARA ultimately delivers because they have had their existing rate for a period of well over a year for some of them.
That's exactly correct. I would say they've had the benefit of not having a rate increase for decades, right? Unfortunately, that means the service they received was also poor.
Just for clarification, you said the water RMRA rate that would go into effect at what time, assuming an order is executed here?
Sure, so the RIMRA rates will be, will happen every year as part of the FRP filing. So the first one would be mid-2024.
Okay.
That folks that we have not included in this case would experience.
Mid-2024, and that would be estimated $2.73 for water.
That was sewer. Water was $1.29. I think I misspoke earlier.
All right.
Just to be clear, obviously this rate proceeding with the existing customers would go to a RIMRA, based on if this rate proceeding is approved.
Just to make sure I understand, so you're saying is the amortization expenses associated with Sarah and Rimmer would show up in your 2024 FRP filing, or your
The 2024 rates, that would be based on a 12/31/2023 test year.
Okay.
But would appear on bills mid-2024.
That's correct.
All right. For RIMRA and Sarah, calling out names, would potentially then show up in mid-2025 or also in 2024?
So the RIMRA costs, which are in this case currently, would show up for customers in 2024, right? The Sarah costs would not show up for customers because they come to the RIMRA rate initially, right? So if you're a new customer in 2024, you get the RIMRA rate, and the new customer in 2025 would then have both the Sarah and the RIMRA a part of it.
New customers.
New customers, correct. There's no Sarah for the existing customers. As stated earlier, those are cash losses.
Okay, thank you.
Any questions from commissioner staff?
No questions for commission.
No questions from staff.
Yeah, I'll do that. And so there was, from staff, and also I appreciate our consultants' work they've done. There were a little bit of discussion about the tariff language as well. And I think the recommendations, or at least the findings, were that these were reasonable requests or suggestions by the public utility staff. Do y'all find those recommendations in alignment as well, or is there still additional conversation?
Commissioner, prior to Commissioner Presley's motion, that item is not in the record.
Okay. All right.
Right, yeah, we're open to discussing it, we're not privy to what they are specifically.
Okay. Well, I mean, I thought it was part of the.
It was a pursuant to Mississippi Code 7729. That was a written recommendation provided to the commission from the staff.
Well, withdraw my question in then?
Withdrawn.
Okay. All right. I guess just a couple more questions. So as we continue to move forward here, I guess in the customer service side, and I know you've added to staff directly here in Mississippi, whether it's engineering, customer service, continue to build that. Are y'all continuing to see, I guess, not really see advancements or achievements, but are you still confident in the ability of your customer service reps and that component of Great River Utility continue to be responsive to needs, especially continue to add customers, and understanding there is going to be, potentially on the horizon, rate increases for those that have been paying zero or very low rates, as you said, for decades. And are y'all, as well as I know we'll need as commissioners and as the commission, prepare ourselves as well, but are y'all as a company also prepared in the near term to confidently address those concerns and potential pushback from the customers that, as we know, have filed comments to date? But how y'all plan to address that matter going forward, I guess, is the short question on that.
Yeah, absolutely. So I would say, first of all, we review customer service metrics every week, right? So we have goals in terms of average handle time, which is 5 minutes, answer time, and below 20 seconds. I mean, it is something that we literally look at on a weekly basis. In terms of well, I believe, Commissioner, what you're asking is there's a spike when you first, put in new rates, right? And absolutely, we've handled that spike in numerous states. Even though, we're servicing, call it 12,000 customers in Mississippi, we service 150,000 customers across the country. So this spike is not going to be something that our existing customer service platform can't handle. We're prepared for that. We're also prepared to talk to our customers because, some customers participate in proceedings. We talk to our customers in various different ways, mailers, social media, and our customer demographics, how they receive information is different. So we know there are customers that are going to need to talk, and we've got a script for that. We're totally prepared for that.
If I could add one thing. We also monitor our customer service work orders for their timeliness in terms of dealing with the customers. And as part of that process, from the customer's experience from beginning to end, it starts with a recorded phone call so we can determine that that customer was treated properly, and then a work order is generated, and that work order is tracked from beginning to end. So we get a detailed summary of what happened with that customer's experience.
All right, and I guess relaying to that, and I appreciate the comments you have and how this transition continues to present itself, in the importance of maintaining safe, reliable systems and what that means for public health and the environment. And so I did ask our Department of Environmental Quality to submit a letter in sort of their thought process and their experience of the Great River to date, and they certainly share our concerns of providing really reasonable, reliable, cost-effective services. And as we know, the Department of Environmental Quality, they're the environmental regulatory agency for the state. And of course, we have to maintain a close working partnership with them in understanding compliance and the effectiveness of certain utility systems out there, in this case, wastewater systems. And they've certainly expressed that they understand and they see that the number of abandoned non-compliant systems out there, and how we can maintain communications to hopefully find solutions to these problematic systems that are creating environmental impacts and potential health hazards. And they have cited the relationship with us, and also the entrance of Great River Utility coming into Mississippi as one of those solution sets to help and resolve, as through the acquisition of these abandoned wastewater facilities and making the commitments, both financial as well as personnel, to bring these systems back into compliance and returning reliable compliance service back to citizens. In many cases, they may not know they're out of compliance or that they're contributing to an environmental situation. But I just wanted to enter this letter into the record as well, demonstrating the relationship between the Public Service Commission and the Department of Environmental Quality, and the recognition that Great River is contributing a positive contribution and service going forward. I've also asked Department of Health to submit as well, their experience to date of Great River's relationship and how we interact in identifying systems that are stressed, non-compliant as well. And when I receive that, I'll be more than happy to enter that as well. But I just wanted to bring that forward. I know I didn't tell anybody we're doing that, but I was curious to hear from our sister and our regulatory agencies, their experience of Great River to date. And so just wanted to put that in.
Mr. Mayor, if you don't have any objection, we'll mark this as Exhibit 12.
No objection.
I don't know if we have anything else, but I do want to express to our consultants who assisted the Public Service Commission through this and their work in the stipulation development, the public utility staff, their water division, and their leadership in bringing their vision, their perspective to this as well. And I think it's been a useful and certainly beneficial exercise to the citizens of Mississippi, understanding it's never comfortable to do significant rate increases in certain cases, particularly when there has been instances of extremely low or no rates for critical services that certainly define the difference between a modern society and a non-modern society. And And these are very critical systems that we need for economic development moving forward in public health and welfare. So I just want to thank the public utility staff as well as our consultants and their work and the cooperation y'all have provided at Great River to help us, reach this point.
Mr. Mayor, any redirect?
I do. I have two short questions, Mr. Hammonds, and these are both, I think, for Mr. Tees. With respect to the SARA and REMRA rate impacts that you discussed with the commission a few minutes ago, those are estimates that you have based upon the authority the commission would provide to you today to defer those costs. But those rate impacts would not impact customers until the commission were to rule on a future FRP filing. Is that right?
That's correct. Every year, the FRP components will be subject to commission review.
Okay, and so is Great River opening, what I gathered from the exchange is perhaps, and I'm somewhat assuming here, that there's some concern of pancaking all at the same time. Is Great River open to working with the commission in future FRP filings to time those impacts so that they're not stacked up?
Of course, absolutely.
Okay. That's all I have, Mr. Hammonds.
Okay. Seeing nothing else, thank you all for being here this morning, and I will take this matter under advisement, and we're adjourned.
Thank you.